Empires built by great men in good times are only maintained by great men and good times. Empires which can withstand the frivolity of the feminine spirit will persist into eternity. Now, with 6,000 years of literary history, I'm sure someone else has already said this. If you know who beat me to it, put it in the comments. Now, for something completely different. Misogynist, a word which carries a great deal of social and emotional power. A magic word, if you will. One of many such words, flung by internet sorcerers, and in recent years flung increasingly lightly, trivially, carelessly. The more one uses, or more precisely misuses a word, the less power it carries, the less respect it commands. So when I claim that the character, Jaehaerys Targaryen, first of his name, the old king, the conciliator, paragon of virtue, in many ways the greatest king in Westeros history, hated women, I don't mean this lightly. This was not the banal resentment of an envious, insecure man, nor was he merely the product of his times, embedded in a culture that could not conceive another paradigm. The precedent set during his reign in excluding women from the Iron Throne went over and above even Westerosi norms and their real-life inspirations. No, through cold calculation, deep learning, and life experience, the Conciliator, as depicted by George R. R. Martin, developed a fear and mistrust of women and their proximity to power. This even led him to gradually and purposefully end the life of his sister queen, Alysanne. Who is Jaehaerys, first of his name, the fourth king of the Targaryen dynasty? He is known as the Conciliator in his youth because of the reforms he imposed, which would define the newly united Westerosi legal system, save Dawn, and later as the Old King, for his long reign, vastly exceeding the two preceding kings, and being longer than any king to come after. As for where George R. R. Martin found inspiration for this character, from English history, Edward III seems the best historical analogue for Jaehaerys, especially in his early life, where he successfully asserted himself over his regents, his mother, and her lover. The 50-year-long reign of Edward III is close enough to the 55-year reign of Jaehaerys the First. Additionally, Edward's queen, Philippa of Hainault, is a strong analogue for good Queen Alysanne, being a model queen who works tirelessly for the crown, widely loved and respected, intelligent and educated. Queen Philippa bore Edward 13 children. Alysanne had as many. In terms of media consumed by Martin, he has likened Alysanne to Eleanor of Aquitaine, as depicted by Catherine Hepburn in A Lion in Winter, implying that Peter O'Toole's Henry II has some influence on Jaehaerys' characterization. For reference, Henry keeps Eleanor under arrest throughout the plot, tries to seize her lands and inheritance, and disowns her sons. The other source we should consider is I, Claudius, a BBC show told from the perspective of the titular character living through the early Roman Empire. Martin has stated the importance of I, Claudius as an inspiration for certain character dynamics, likening Stannis to Tiberius, sort of. But George Baker's Tiberius also inspired Maegor, as Sean Phillips' Livia is Visenya, Brian Blessed, who of all people played Augustus, is Aegon I, which makes John Hurt's Caligula Jaehaerys. Yes, that Caligula. After Maegor came to the throne, Jaehaerys, Alysanne, and their mother Alyssa were taken hostage by Visenya on the Isle of Dragonstone. Similarly, Caligula was held on the island of Capri by Tiberius, before ascending to emperor with the latter's death. Lastly, Caligula, at least in I, Claudius, adaptation, married and had incestuous relations with his younger sister Drusilla. I'm sure there are other inspirations, and if you know any, comment section. Anyway, I said Jaehaerys hates women, let's get to why. In 42 AC, King Aenys the Only, father of Jaehaerys, died under suspicious circumstances, whilst in the Grand Dowager Queen Visenya's care. Before his ashes were cold, Visenya left across the narrow sea to retrieve her son Maegor from exile, installed Maegor as king over Jaehaerys' older brother, the Crown Prince Aegon. Following this, Visenya held 10-year-old Jaehaerys, his favourite sister, and mother captive at Dragonstone, whilst Maegor went on to kill Prince Aegon, as well as their middle brother Viserys. There are strong parallels between the Jaehaerys and Caligula's early lives, as Tiberius and his mother Livia were known to have had Caligula's male relatives, father and brothers, killed. If this wasn't enough, Maegor also had Jaehaerys disinherited, in favour of Rhaenyra's daughter Arya, the Arya who went off to join the faith, not the false Arya who stole Balerion and got eaten from the inside out by fireworms. Despite all this, Jaehaerys was under Visenya's care for 3 to 4 years, thus probably took an interest in the future king's education. And, at some level, Visenya was probably trying to save the fledgling Targaryen dynasty, even from itself. King Jaehaerys would later grow his hair into a single long braid, an homage to Visenya's own signature hairstyle. There was respect there. But Visenya, having survived her brother-husband by 7 years, went on to meddle in the order of succession, directly resulting in death and suffering for Jaehaerys' immediate family. This Dowager Queen problem began by Visenya was continued by Jaehaerys' mother, Dowager Queen of Aenys and Queen Regent, was described by Septon Barth as desiring to be loved, admired, and praised above all else. After Visenya's death, Alyssa stole away from Dragonstone with Jaehaerys and Alysanne, and went to the Storm's End to seek the support and protection of Lord Rhaegar Baratheon. Following Maegor's eventual death, Alyssa and Rhaegar seated Jaehaerys on the throne, and proceeded to rule through him, Rhaegar as Hand of the King, Alyssa as Regent. Jaehaerys, playing Edward III in this case, Alyssa as Isabel of France, and Rhaegar Baratheon as Roger Mortimer. These regents further cemented their power through marriage, an overly lavish second wedding for Alyssa which had ruinous implications for the treasury. By marrying the Queen Mother, Rhaegar was seeking to become the de facto king of the Seven Kingdoms. And speaking of magic words, one of the most meme-worthy power moves in modern discourse is to sleep with another man's mother. Alyssa and her husband also presumed to decide whomst Jaehaerys would marry, and it would not be his bride of choice, Alysanne. As things stood, Rhaegar was seeking to take the throne for himself, and Alyssa was handing it to him. Once again, a Dowager Queen was trying to marginalise him in favour of a British man who made her feel safe, rather than trusting Jaehaerys' supposed maturity and intelligence. Eventually Alyssa would have to retire with her husband to Storm's End, wherein she would die at 46, giving birth to her 8th child, a death in childbirth in which Jaehaerys was there to witness. This will be relevant later. Rhaenyra, Queen of the East or the West, the eldest child of Aenys and Alyssa, older sister, mother of dragons, persistent thorn in her side and dynastic liability. Starting life as a shy, dreamy child, doing her duty to her family, and seeking to take care of younger siblings, Rhaenyra was the one to start the tradition of placing a dragon egg in a Targaryen princeling's cradle. Once she bonded with her dragon Dreamfire, however, she became a stern and brooding woman, known for her scorn and fury. Rhaenyra developed a habit of shaming others and threatening them with dragonfire. This includes antagonizing the poor fellows of the Faith Militant. It is said that if one must choose, it is better to be feared than to be loved. But anyone who has read The Prince knows Machiavelli included a caveat. Under no circumstances can you allow yourself to become hated. For if you are hated, no amount of fear will keep you safe, for hatred causes people to lose their self-preservation instinct, and would gladly pay any price to cause you any injury. Whereas Jaehaerys would master the art of the veiled threat, instilling necessary fear but letting the recipient keep their dignity, failing to do this, as Rhaena did, makes her few friends and many enemies. This might mean little, had she remained content not to rule the Seven Kingdoms. Rhaena had come out in support of Jaehaerys' ascension after Maegor's death, but later in life the Queen of the East became embittered towards her little brother and sister who had stolen her throne. It isn't clear that the Targaryens or the Valyrians practiced oldest child inheritance, regardless of gender, as did the Rhoynar. Rhaena seems to believe so, and Alysanne later saw merit in it, but Aegon was crowned over his elder sister Visenya. I suspect the actual Valyrian law is who rides the largest dragon rules. Aegon claimed Balerion, thus Aegon inherited Dragonstone. But regardless, Rhaena believed the eldest child should inherit, and that logic did not serve Jaehaerys' own stay on the throne. Moreover, whilst Rhaena as Mother of Dragons was vital to the Targaryen dynasty, as an actual ruler she was both weak and incompetent. It is said that the most scared dog barks the loudest. Rhaena's second marriage was for love, but not before her husband. Andrew Farman was a weak, useless man, a second son who stood to inherit nothing, and whose only merit was that he gave cover for Rhaena's real love interest, his sister Alyssa. Alyssa Farman indulged Rhaena for a time, but what she really wanted was to acquire a big ship and sail west of Westeros. When Rhaena didn't let her do that, Alyssa ran off with 3 dragon eggs. Yes, those dragon eggs. And sold them in Braavos for said ship. This would be a huge threat to the Targaryen monopoly on dragon power, leading to a standoff between the Iron Throne and the most powerful of 3 cities, which was resolved not at all to Jaehaerys' satisfaction, despite the historical whitewashing. Rhaena would find no solace or value in her lavender marriage, which came with no political nor practical benefits. And worse, Andro's long experience of disregard and humiliation led him to eventually poison all of Rhaena's friends and allies with the rare and expensive Tears of Lys, before throwing himself out the window. And given Andrew was unremarkable, illiterate, simply not clever enough to be a Maester, one must wonder how he got his hands on the poison in the first place. Following this incident, Rhaena's daughter and her heir, Rhaella, called Elia, remember the twins switched, dissatisfied with her life on Dragonstone, escaped her mother, stole Balerion the Black Dread, oldest and largest of the Targaryen dragons, and vanished for a year. After much fruitless searching, Balerion, most mighty beast in all the world, returned to the Red Keep, terribly wounded and bearing a dying Rhaella on his back, dying a death worthy of Lovecraft. In any event, Rhaena was unable to keep her own house in order. Worse still, she lacked the industriousness of her younger siblings. She may have felt entitled to the throne, but she was unfit to rule, or so Jaehaerys must have thought. Alysanne bore 13 children for her brother-husband: Aegon, Daenerys, Aemon, Baelon, Alyssa, Maegor, Vaegon, Daela, Sarah, Visera, Gaemon, Valerion, and Gale. 13 children that lived long enough to receive a name. Whilst their first child, Aegon, was born too early and died, and their second, Daenerys, died inexplicably due to a plague called the Shivers, Alysanne successfully delivered her heir, Aemon, and the spare, Baelon. The next daughter, Alyssa, was boyish and uncouth, but otherwise eagerly pursued wifehood and motherhood with her brother Baelon, ultimately birthing the future monarch and his spare. However, nearly every child after these 3 proved to be lacking in some fundamental qualities, or perhaps over-endowed to the point of being a liability, a nuisance, or even an outright menace. Vagon was so bookish, so disdainful of physical, that the only path he could possibly pursue in life was Archmaester of the Citadel. Dela was invincible in her fussiness, feeble of mind and body, frightened by small animals. She frustrated Jaehaerys, who was perhaps too eager to marry her off, too young. Eventually she would contribute to the dynasty by marriage alliance and bearing the future queen, but such an early pregnancy for this frail girl cost Dela her life. Sarah. Sarah was tempestuous, demanding, and disobedient. She acted as if she were the firstborn, even though she was only the ninth. At 16 or 17, she was involved in a public sex scandal, which led to Jaehaerys having to butcher one of her boyfriends in single combat, Sarah trying to steal a dragon, and then eventually escaping a life of the faith, becoming a prostitute in Lys, and eventually owning a brothel in Volantis. Jaehaerys disowned Sarah, and the refusal to forgive his daughter led to the first quarrel with Alysanne. Visera was a less brazen, slyer version of Sarah. She set her eyes on her older brother Balon after Alyssa's death in childbirth, seeking to become queen through marriage, though she was denied by Alysanne before eventually dying in a drunken horse race. The boys Gaemon and Valerian died young, and Gale, whilst a comfort to Alysanne in her old age, killed herself after a sex scandal of her own. Sure, there was Maegelle, otherwise her mother's daughter, who was exceedingly pious, and eagerly became a sceptre. Maegelle would intercede twice on her father's behalf, with their mother, to reconcile their two quarrels, their quarrels over succession and a woman's right to rule. This presents a conundrum. If so many of Jaehaerys' children were unmanageable, unable or unwilling to honour and contribute to the dynasty, why require Alysanne to go through all those dangerous taxing childbirths? Bearing and delivering a child may be a joy for a young woman of 10 and 7, like Princess Alyssa. It is quite another matter for one of 40, like her mother, Queen Alysanne. The joy was therefore not entirely unalloyed when her grace was found to have been pregnant once again. Prince Valerian was born in 77 AC, after another troubled labour that saw Alysanne confined to her bed for half a year. Like his brother Gaemon, 4 years earlier, he was a small and sickly babe, and never thrived. Half a dozen wet nurses came and went to no avail. In 78 AC, Valerian died, a fortnight short of his first name day, and the Queen took his passing with resignation. "I am 42 years old," she told the king. "You must be content with the children I have given you. I am more suited to be a grandmother than a mother now, I fear." King Jaehaerys did not share her certainty. Our mother, Queen Alyssa, was 46 when she gave birth to Jocelyn. He pointed out to Grandmaster Elisar, "The gods may not be done with us." Page 305, The Long Reign, Jaehaerys and Alysanne, Policy, Progeny and Pain, Fire and Blood. Except Queen Alyssa died, horribly. Jocelyn had to be removed in a C-section, crude as it was, and Jaehaerys knew that well, for he was present at the death and birth. Milk of the poppy would relieve the Queen's pain, he said, and he had a strong draught prepared, but he could kill her grace as easily as help her, and would almost certainly kill the child inside her. When Jaehaerys asked what could be done, the master said, "For the Queen, nothing. She is beyond my power to save. There is a chance, a slight chance, that I could save the child. To do so would need to cut the mother open and remove the child from her womb. The babe might live on, or not. The woman will die." Page 217, Birth, Death and Betrayal under King Jaehaerys the First, Fire and Blood. Jaehaerys is observant of the taboo of kingslaying, going so far as to let us slay Rhaegar's treasonous brother, so the Lord of Storm's End need not stain himself with the deed. Doubly so cursed should be the man that kills his other half, twin souls, 2 hearts beat as one, and all that. But it isn't considered murder if the gods do it.
You would spill blood in this holy place.
Well, the gods won't mind.
They spill more blood than the rest of us combined.
Rhaena Targaryen pushed through all of them to stand over him, and began to curse him to his face. "Her blood is on your hands," she raged at him. "Her blood is on your cock. May you die screaming." Rhaegar Baratheon was outraged by her accusations. "What are you saying, woman? This is the will of the gods. The stranger comes for us all. How could it be my doing? What did I do? You put your cock in her. She gave you one son. That should have been enough. Save my wife, you should have said. But what are wives to men like you?" Page 219. Birth, Death, and Betrayal under King Jaehaerys the First. Fire and Blood. In fact, it doesn't even need to kill Alysanne right away. All Jaehaerys has to do is ensure that she dies first. He survives his wife by 5 years. Jaehaerys does this to avoid the Dowager Queen problem. Like Visenya and even Alyssa, Alysanne wields enormous influence, has been incredibly persuasive in the past, and the good Queen has been very consistent in advocating equal inheritance. Following Prince Aegon's death, Alysanne wanted Daenerys to be named heir, and following Aemon's, she pushed for Rhaenys. If Alysanne survived Jaehaerys, she could have altered the succession.
The only one present who might offer keener insight into Lord Corlys's wishes is the Princess Rhaenys.
Indeed, Your Grace.
As Alicent Hightower later would. Now, we don't know how well Rhaenys would have performed as monarch. The queen that never was could have been all anyone ever could have wished for, but that doesn't matter. If female-inclusive succession was allowed, it would only be a matter of time until a Targaryen like Rhaena, or worse, like Sarah, ascended the throne, and that could spell doom for the Targaryen dynasty. So, in the spirit of love is the death of duty, and much like Ego in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, giving Quill's mother brain cancer, Jaehaerys had to speed along Alysanne's demise.
Reason for my very existence would be over, so I did what I had to do. But it broke my heart to put that tumor in her head.
In the end, Jaehaerys would be proved both right and incredibly wrong. It would be Rhaenyra, the realm's delight, sitting upon the Iron Throne when the fragile peace between the crown and the faith shattered, a peace nurtured by the old king. A preacher known as the Shepherd would incite thousands of believers into a near-suicidal attack on the dragon pit. Hundreds would die, but in the end 5 dragons would be slain, including Rhaenyra's Dreamfire and Rhaenyra's Syrax. Now, it could be that the economic conditions in King's Landing were the result of Aegon II sequestering the treasury, leaving Rhaenyra to rely on force alone. The forces arrayed against her and the many losses she suffered would strain even a brilliant ruler, and neither of the claimants were that. But it would seem Jaehaerys was right, and the realm and the faith wouldn't accept a mother of dragons on the throne, and these willful Targaryen women would bring down ruin on their house. However, those willful, inconvenient, aggressive women were essential for the continuation of Targaryen power, namely the dragons. It is never explicitly stated in George's work, but in following Daenerys Stormborn in A Game of Thrones, and reading of similar women in Fire and Blood, we can infer their importance. The dragons bloomed in their presences of Rhaena, Rhaenys, Rhaenyra, and probably would have around Sarah as well. Without these women, the dragons no longer thrived. And in cutting off all ties with Sarah, Jaehaerys may well have doomed the dynasty in ways no one could have predicted. And this decision cost Jaehaerys physically. A fit man even into his 40s, he was never the fit man he used to be after Sarah's disownment. And he lost the rest following Alysanne's passing. In his bedridden old age, under the supervision of Alicent Hightower, whom he mistook for his daughter Sarah, returned from Essos, who knows what secrets he spilled to this future queen, what regrets hung upon his heart. When I think of this Jaehaerys, I think of the Greek titan Kronos, Saturn, who devours his children so that one day they could not overthrow him. A reasonable fear, given that he overthrew his own father Uranus. Some thought should be given to the wives of these father gods, Rhea and Gaia, respectively, both of whom had encouraged and aided their children in overthrowing their fathers. It is inevitable that women, wives and daughters, will lead to a man's replacement. The daughters may one day invite some punk who will try to knock you off your perch. The wives, even if you satisfy them, will be the ones to give birth to the children which will replace you, and if you don't, they will replace you with some other man who can. Only Balon the Brave remained near her till the end. Her spring prince visited as often as he could, and always won a smile from her. Balon was the Prince of Dragonstone, Hand of the King, forever coming and going, sitting at his father's side in council, eating with lords. "You will be a great king, even greater than your father," Alysanne told him, the last time they were together. She did not know. How could she know? Page 336 and 337. The Long Reign, Jaehaerys and Alysanne, Policy and Progeny and Pain, Fire and Blood. Balon did not live to see the fulfillment of this, dying of what seems to be appendicitis 2 years before his father would pass. King Jaehaerys the First, the Conciliator, the Old King, was to be considered the best king of the Targaryen dynasty. This was not his greatest achievement, but his greatest failure.
My life, when it is written, will read better than it lived. Henry Fitz-Empress, first Plantagenet, a king at 21, the ablest soldier of an able time. He led men well, he cared for justice when he could, and ruled for 30 years a state as great as Charlemagne's. He married out of love a woman out of legend. Not in Alexandria or Rome or Camelot has there been such a queen. She bore him many children, but no sons.